Hello, and welcome to Raise the Bar, the Sky High and Fly Jump Camps podcast. I am your host, Troy Haynes, and I'm going to introduce part 3 of the Paul Galas interview. Paul is a young man who competed down here at the University of Indiana. He was born and raised in Canada, and he managed to get himself invited to the 2021 Canadian Olympic trials in the high jump, where he placed third. He was unfortunately unable to compete for Canada in the games. His height wasn't quite high enough to get in, but he has been telling us what it's like to jump in Canada and has been giving us all kinds of interesting viewpoints on training. He is now a coach, and he is earning himself a reputation up there in Canada. So get ready to take some notes, buckle your seatbelts, and get ready for part 3 with Paul Galas.
I put another one in my feed there recently. I don't know if you saw it. He had a really close miss at 7.6.5. And I posted that one, and I put a couple of biomechanical, breakdowns. I put it on screen. And
yes, I did see that. Yes.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. He was very gracious. And, I asked him first. I kind of started doing that, and I realized I probably should ask people before I break down.
Start critiquing so much.
It's not even so much critique. I'm actually trying to just teach stuff. Like I'll just say, hey, I'm looking at this angle, the lean to the side. I'm always teaching my kids. I go, there's 2 leans. You got to lean back, and you got to lean into the curve. Away from the bar. And I try to quantify both. And it was interesting. You just brought up that thing about the angles. Like I would love. This is my thing. I would love to have a training facility where they get all 3 angles. And my 3 angles that I want is the straight down the bar shot, right? So I can see how far you're leaning to the left or the right, okay? And then I want the shot straight at the bar from behind you, which I don't usually watch. Every once in a while I will. It's not a great angle, and when people send me that angle, the jumper's running away from you and you're looking at the pit, I can't see how they're converting up off the ground. There's a lot of things that I miss, but I do see the lean back angle, which is valuable, right? I can see them leaning back at the takeoff if they're doing a good job. And then I can also see where they're planting in relation to the bar. So if they're, Barshim and those guys blow my mind that they take off from outside of the standard and jump across. Like I did that one time when I was at UCLA, but I was too close and I hit the standard with my head because I was in a spot. And that was a real quick learning curve for me. I'm like, I don't care what, but I'm always going to be jumping from inside the standard. So I use that because I'm training athletes that are not Barshim, obviously. So I like the down the bar. I like the straight on view. And then every once in a while, I'll watch the curve from the backside, just to see how that looks on the backside of the curve. So there's 3 cameras that I'd love to have set up for every jump. And the 4th camera is straight out of football. I would love to have a camera, and I've actually done this, and I don't think I've ever posted the pictures yet, but I have a drone that I overhead to watch the curve, because you never really see the whole curve clear. You know what I'm saying? I would like, I want to get that and master it, and then be able to draw lines and go, hey, this is what you ran, right here.
That'd be really cool. I've never thought of an aerial type view. Yeah, like that, especially in the high jump. Like the long jump, triple jump, probably not as relevant, but the high jump for sure. Like you're just kind of guessing the curve, right? Like you can't.
Yes.
I've tried standing on a plyo box or 2 to try to get that, but like at some point, you look like the Eiffel Tower up there, just standing on a bunch of boxes, and you're not really getting the view you want.
They have them in football. They have those.
Yeah, that's true. Those
cameras up in the end zone that you look straight down. So the technology is definitely there. But anyway, that's on the, if I had $1 million to.
And even on that note, like the technology around track and field and just general strength training, I think is now so complex and so many options. I'm lucky at the school I'm at, we have a lot of gadgets, but it's so easy for me to just kind of get too wrapped up on the data and trying to pull this, pull that, and use all these fancy things. And like I kind of alluded to earlier, at what point am I just fluffing things instead of having it be concrete? And something like like just showing like a drone, for example, like it's an expensive piece of equipment, but like it's quite frankly, like you can see where the person did occur, right? Like,
right.
And you can show it to the athlete and they get it, right? Like, sometimes I try to hold back a little bit and not try to over explain things to athletes because I get so caught up on,
right.
If this number was better, if you were a tenth faster here on the runway, you'd jump this or that. And
right.
like,
right.
do they really care? Like, did I jump far or not? Right. Like it's, one of those things where it's that delicate balance. And yeah, like you said, it's just technology is such a tool in which, people tap into for the right reasons, and
right.
sometimes they get caught up in it. So
yeah,
and I always like to remind myself too, like, people were jumping 7.5 without a cell phone, right? Like that's just the way it was, and they were doing something that you could probably still do today and be successful.
Yeah, but you couldn't see any of that training,
exactly. Yeah.
I've never seen one of the guys I love watching. We could talk about that for a little bit, but I watch Brandon Stark from Australia, who jumped really well in the Olympics. I think he came in 5th. I watched his training all year long, and he does some just mind-boggling stuff in his training. I mean, get on his feet and look at his stuff. It's really amazing. He runs super high and fast. He used to have a 16-step approach from a dead stand. And when he goes. Like when he starts, all of a sudden he's like at 80% speed within 2 steps, it looks like. And he does a lot of curves, curved hurdles. I've seen him set out hurdles on a curve where he goes 1, 2, 3, boom. And he leaves the drive knee up and he'll cycle the other leg around. And I've seen 2 or 3 different versions of that. And I've seen him go 1, 2, 3, boom, 1, 2, 3, boom, 1, 2, 3, boom, and 1, 2, 3 into the pit, and just really creative. I don't know if it was him, if it's his coach, I have no idea, but there's a lot of stuff that I'm looking at going, I want to steal that. I just don't know if I got anybody that can do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's exactly. Yeah.
Amazing.
That's a dangerous thing too. That's a dangerous thing to have learned, because Brandon Stark can do it doesn't mean my developmental high jumper can do it. Right. Like that's,
it's you can set the hurdles lower. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm curious, what did it take for him to get to that?
Right.
Like maybe there's a few steps we're missing and those weren't on film. Right.
Yeah.
So
that's
you really don't know. Right. Like it's like, maybe he had to do X, Y, and Z prerequisites to get there. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, what were they?
I'm gonna try to get him on here now. I want to try.
Yeah, the only way to know is to pick someone's brain and probably his coach. I know his coach is Alex Stewart, who's, I've reached out through an Instagram DM once or twice, and he's given me a 1-2 tidbit and just full of knowledge and really just experience. I working with guys like Brandon, and I think he has an Italian guy there in the 230s as well. Like you see it, right? And they all probably come from, you see it and you see it like every day, and then you know what it takes. So then the next along, it's just, okay, here's the roadmap. Like obviously there's going to be adjustments for whoever, but it's relatively, you find something that works, you try not to break it. Right. Yeah. But you also don't want to get complicit and, back to what I talked about earlier, it's that's the art of coaching, right? Like you find a system that works, but don't get attached to it because it doesn't work for everybody.
Right.
So
oh man, that is so, it's both frustrating and this is for you coaches out there. Now we've been talking for over an hour here with Paul Galas from Canada. But we're talking about training and lots of things and the dangers of thinking that your system is right. And I had a jumper 2 years ago or 3 years ago now, who got himself a scholarship down to UC San Diego. And he was a 6'6" high jumper who every year when the chips were down at the Masters meet to go to state, he would jump 6'4" and just miss making it. And that happened to him 2 years in a row. And at the end of his junior year, I finally got him. I mean, I think he was just fed up and he said, all right, I'm going to give you your shot. Because I'd been recruiting him for 3 years. Mm-hmm. And we got to work. And I want to tell you that nothing with Jack Weissman came easy. He was willing to work. He was open. There were just a lot of habits that were in there that were hard to break. And my thing with him was, I go, dude, I have got to move you farther away from the bar. He was right on top of the bar. He was flexible. He'd start to drive his knee up, but since he was right next to the bar, he'd have to ditch his knee drive early to get into a layout because he had to contort over the bar because he's right on top of it. And it wasn't that he was converting into it so much. He was just too pick and close. So I tried, oh my gosh, I've got a list of different things that I tried. Drills. I invented drills. It was it was a great process. Looking back at it, I can honestly say, I thank God that he put me through it, because it taught me a lot. And it, like you said, there were other people that I've said, hey, we need to move you farther out. And they just move farther out.
Yeah.
And they start jumping and you're like, okay, you're fixed. I was like, that was easy. Not so with Jack. Boy, it was a real thing. I developed a drill I called roll out the bar, where I put a bar on the ground and I started rolling it. Like I put it right next to the bar so it's easy to jump over, and you put the bar on. But then I start just one roll at a time. It gets like another inch farther out, and we just keep running through and jumping. And I go, hey, you made it into the pit on that one. Let's try this. Try it farther out, and he loved that drill. And we got to a point where I go, okay, at first I didn't think he'd ever go for it. And then it started to pay dividends. And then I'm like, Jack, we can't put the bar on the ground at a meet because he really liked that drill. And I was like, I love it too, but it can't be a crutch, because in real competitions, you can't do that. We got to get it. And I still think, even though he ended up jumping 6'10" his senior year, he got third in the state and got his ride. I remember thinking, as he was taking his jumps at 6'10", I was thinking, dang, he's still too close. Like I'm trying to get him farther out.
Yeah. And sometimes like those guys who just live under the bar, like they're just such athletic specimens that they can get away with that. Right. So it's like, you can just crowd the bar, load the foot, and then manipulate yourself in the air. Like that's just gifted. Right. And then, and then you get the coach and you're like, you want to move them back, because that there's so much more, right?
Yes.
That's available if you just make this adjustment, and however way you get it, if it's just excessive cueing, like you said, and just move back, like that's what it is. Or if you got to get creative and find ways to, put them in positions without them thinking about it, right?
Well, we tried a piece of tape, right? We put a piece of tape in, and that was easy. And they just go right over.
And they stare at it, and the moment, like the long jump, I'm telling you, like in the long jump, you're running, you're looking at the board, like 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to fault, because the thing you're looking at, you're never actually going to hit it. It just, it's not going to work. Right. And the same thing with tape. I try the tape thing for a little bit too. It's like, you put it down and then they're running and they look down, and the next thing the posture breaks and you're like,
Yep.
Like
the tape didn't work. Then we put down a piece of foam, because we figured if he stepped on it, it wouldn't hurt. Right. So you go right over that. And it wasn't until the bar thing that I go, hey, if you step on this bar, you're gonna roll your ankle, So
and that's and I don't know, like that's definitely playing with fire, right? Like I don't know if I take that risk, but you would, right? And it's like, that's the beauty of coaching. Like people kind of, there's no lines, and people can find ways to do that. Like, and like that's. Yeah, like I thinking about that, I'd be scared to do that, because I would just, I feel like I'd.
Well, that was the beauty of the analogy is this. This is a classic, but I tell the kids, I go, look, if you take a frog and you stick them in a hot pan of water, they'll jump right out, right? You throw them in hot water and they jump out. But if you put them in a pot and it's cool water and you slowly start heating it, they just sit there. And you can keep turning it up, and
that's a good one.
Sit there and you'll eventually cook, right? So I go, we're going to use that analogy in another direction. I said, we're going to start here where it just seems super easy, and we're going to move the bar the tiniest bit, and all you got to make sure is that you move back. We weren't radically increasing the speed, a little bit, but the bar never went up. I had the bar at, I think he was scissor kicking like 5 feet or something, and so he eventually got to where he was good 3 feet out, and would drive up into a scissor kick and would leave the knee up and just wait and get all the way over the bar and then pull the other leg over. And I was just like, I think that's it. I think that's finally got it. But it was like, it was the old frog analogy, because it was just that little bit each time, because he knew that he had just made the one before, and he already, we had a mark down, so he knew where his step was. So. But it was risky, but then I was starting to pull my hair out. So
yeah, exactly. That thing is like, it's one of those things where he sounds like somebody who needs to feel something.
Yeah.
Right. And then like you don't, but as a coach, you don't know what he feels, and he can't express it because he doesn't know how it feels either. So it's like, those are those scratching things, and you try to develop, you put them in these scenarios where you're hoping that they feel whatever you're trying to, teach. Right. And it's like,
yeah.
And then you just gotta, and then the great coaches, like, then they use analogies like that, and then they find, ways that it's just a common, and then a common denominator, and then they tweak it a little bit, right? And that's just how,
right,
you can break habits, and now the next time you have somebody who's crowding the bar, you kind of know what's worked, and it's like, oh, okay, well,
I've got a couple things too, but yeah, it's different. Like you said, athletes are different. Going by feel, I tend to be the overanalyst. You were talking about, the numbers and everything. I want to explain exactly why I think this is what they need to do. And some of them, the technicians are right there with you.
Yeah.
They're not all technicians.
They're not all physics majors either. That's the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I caught myself doing that a few times, earlier when I first started going, and you as a young coach, when you first get into, it's like you want to use all these big words and all this stuff. You learned it because it's new, it's exciting. You knew it, and what better way to show them I know what I'm talking about than use all these fancy words.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, they actually have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't stick, because it's just fluff, right? Like, but you want to use that knowledge and then put it, in ways but then sometimes I'll have this one kid who's like super analytical, and it'll be like, oh yeah, like I need to know what this feels like, about what angle do I need to be here. And it's like, oh man, shoot, like that's just actually above my pay grade now. Like I actually don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like it is what it is. And yeah, like that's just the individuality that you need. Like you have a program, but every individual athlete in there is,
it's another interesting thing. Jack was one, and I have a new gal that's jumping with me, this job I just got at Vanguard University. And he always wanted to put the bar up higher. And I'm not a big believer in this, but I think, for most of the stuff that I'm working on technique wise, I'm like, I want to make it easy for you to get this move down, and then we'll go up. I'm okay with pushing the envelope. But he was always like, can we put it up, coach? Let's, and I had to learn that it was better for Jack to put the bar up. Where with other kids, I've gotten great results with, lower bars. I mean, so I'm sure sometimes people are looking at my feet going, what are they jumping at? That bar is like 3 feet, 4 feet tops. I'm like, well, for this drill, it doesn't need to be a whole lot higher than that until they get it down, and then I can move it up, right? But Jack did not like that. He wanted to go higher almost all the time, and there's definitely trends that way. I think this young gal that I've got, Juliana, she likes the bar up, and I gotta listen. I gotta be more flexible and be like,
yeah, I get it. Yeah, okay. It's interesting. You bring that up, like even on the technical side of things, like it depends what you're working on. Like, are you working on, bar clearance, takeoff, or is it runway stuff? I know, like there's a jumper out of Britain. I was listening at some conference over the pandemic, and the British coach was speaking, and he was saying, like, I think the year he jumped 230 something. I don't think in practice they just, like, his runway was not where it needed to be, so they just jumped 180 bars the whole time.
Yeah.
And just like the whole time in practice, like if you're coming from a full approach, you're doing a 180 bar. Like that's just the way it was. Right. Maybe shorter. I mean, it's hard to believe someone jumps 230 not seeing a 220 bar in practice at least.
Right.
So like maybe during a short approach or something, like you're doing something like that. But like at least from full approach, they were saying like, 180, like you're just 6 feet, like that, and the guy jumps 7'7", right? Like, yeah. But the runway needed help, and that's just what they need to do. A little drastic, maybe, but like if it worked for him, you have to worry about the bar clearance or anything, and maybe they worked on that separately, right? Yeah. Like, I don't know. So yeah, it's again, and sometimes I'll have an athlete too who, like, they want to push the envelope and see where they're at, and if the jump looks the same at a higher bar, sure. But the moment, like my rule of thumb is, the moment you start doing something different, it's probably not a good idea to go up in practice.
Yeah, when your technique starts breaking down, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, like if you're jumping the same way you are at 5'5", if you're a female at 5'5", and then I bring the bar to 5'7", it looks the same. Sure, if you go to 5'9", you know you start pounding that knee in the ground, and you're out of a curve running a straight line. It's like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Right? Like it's probably not a good idea. So yeah,
Well,
no, I get that, and it's and then I'll have someone who's like, I don't want to see a high bar. Like I just hate seeing the bar fall. So we're just gonna stay low, and it's like, if that's what you need, well, you gotta get X, Y, and Z. But then you have the prerequisites before that where you can kind of be flexible. So
yeah, I find that whole dynamic interesting because there's only so many jumps that you have in your legs also, right? So
yeah,
as we all know, overuse injuries are a huge problem for jumpers. So shin splints and ankles and, patellar tendonitis, of all of those, I've had all. I've rolled my ankles. I've, had bad shin splints. I got patellar tendonitis in both knees my senior year, just from stupid overtraining, even in the midst of this great year that I was having. And, so I'm always very cognizant of number of reps on jump days. And, I usually start at the bar and work my way back. So we do back-overs, and then we go 0 step, where they're literally standing right there with their plant foot on the ground and the other foot 1 step behind, and then go from 0, 1, 3, 5 and back. And usually by the time we get to 3 and 5, we're getting done with the workout, so on other days I might start instead of at the 0 and just go, okay, we had a good day on those the other day. Let's start at 3, go 3, 5 and go back. But it's still not going to be like 20 jumps or something like that, because you just can't take that many. I don't think,
No. Yeah. I'm not I don't over rely on boxes, but for some athletes, if we know we probably have a lot of sessions, like I have a very minimal angled box.
Mm-hmm.
That's it's like I actually had to have my carpenter friend build it, because it's like, it's like you can't really buy them. Like it's like a little wedge just to take a little bit off that foot.
Right.
And it gives you this, if we're working on patience up the bar, like maybe that cues that up, and it saves you a little bit. So that might save me a few jumps. But yeah, very rarely are we going like once you get to double digit number of jump counts, it's probably time to cut it anyway. But yeah, it's trying to find creative ways to not, rely on a box, but also take something off that foot. Because like you said, that's a lot of force being put on that joint there.
Right.
Put it down and jump. So
I'm gonna hit you with 2 more ideas, and I'm gonna let you go because we're already getting.
Yeah, man. No worries. Yeah, no worries.
I've got a box that was designed. There's a young jumper at UCLA right now named Sean Lee. His dad, Ron Lee, was a jumper in college that I competed against, and his son broke a lot of age records as he was coming up.
Nice. Yeah.
Every year almost for a long time, and he jumped 7'3" in high school in California. His junior year, I think he jumped 7'3", or maybe it was his senior year. And he won state twice. He went off to UCLA, and his dad had a training box that he designed and built. And they used it to do basically straight approaches, straight at the bar, and he would drive his knee up. But I have pictures of it, and Ron has not given me how he built it, but I think somebody that maybe your friend, I need to build one. I want to build one because it's one of those things that I'm like, well, this kid jumped 7'3". Now his son ended up being 6'8". He's just like Bondarenko. He comes from the same side as Bondarenko, and he's real fast, and he just kind of, single arms it, and he should have been born in Europe. So I'm looking at this kid, and I'm just like, geez, he's an antelope. He's just 7'3".
Yeah.
But the training box the interesting was behind that. So I have, when you brought that up, that your buddy built one, I'm like, oh, somebody can build this one. What was the other thing that popped into my head? I just wrote myself a note while we were talking about that to go. There was one more thing. Oh, this is I need to get this new supplement they're calling Prevagen. Keep your memory as you get older. I'm like, oh, I need that because I forget things so fast. It was something about it's going to go away from me. Okay, but Well, hey, Paul, I really want to thank you for your time,
Of course.
being gracious and sharing so many ideas. I would love to do it again sometime. And you and I have gotten more into the meat of coaching than I have, and that probably because Jordan and Tyler are still jumping.
They're still in it, yeah. I kind of offer the both lenses here, but
yeah. So you and I both being out of it and being coaches now, it's a different kind of a search, and I find all your insights, incredibly valuable. Oh, I know what it was. It came back to me.
Go ahead. Yeah, shoot.
I know I've mentioned the 3 camera angles, or 4, down the bar, straight on, behind, up on top.
Yep.
The last thing I want, and I think it's, you're familiar with the literature being in the kines majors. Did you ever read anything by Garhammer? He put force plates under the Olympic lifts in the 84 games. Somehow he got them to put force plates in there while they were doing, clean and jerk and snatch and all that stuff. And he would measure the ground reaction forces, right, as you're pushing down, as you're driving up, and the changes in velocity. I mean, amazing stuff, right? This guy John Garhammer is like rocket scientist smart. I took a couple classes of his, actually 3 or 4, when I was at Cal State Long Beach getting my master's in exercise science, and he just brilliant, right? And he's deriving these formulas on the board, and you're just like, oh my gosh, this guy should be building rockets somewhere. But this force plate analysis stuff, I keep thinking it would be really cool to put one of them under the high jump takeoff so that we could measure the ground reaction forces that are generated, first of all, and then how long they're on the ground from heel strike to toe off, right?
Yeah.
Come off.
No, that's interesting. I mean, that'd be, like I know, at Indiana too, I had some pretty good like professors in biomechanics, and there was a man named Jesus De Pena, who's actually a famous, like he was an official in the high jump.
Right.
And later he was just our official who was always officiating, and then later did I find out he's a guru in biomechanics and loves the high jump. And I remember one time Druin was like my first year there, Druin was around, and he set up all these tools, and I was still trying to learn like what it was, and the camera angles everywhere. Right. And then he was deriving some sort of like formulas, and his brain was just working. And I'd asked a question, and it was just way over my head at the time. And I think, reaching out to people and just getting those numbers and using them. And like, I would love to see those numbers, but I would be so hesitant to show an athlete those numbers. Right. Because then they're like, well, what, like, and then, like, if you're an 19-year-old kid, you got to say, oh, well, what do I got to do to get my ground contact, my force production? Right. Do I got to lift more weights? Do I got to just stand on one foot and jump off boxes? I don't know. Yeah. Right. Like, and then, but I would love, I would love to track that personally. But then again, it's like, what would I share with them? I don't know. Right.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. That would be fun. Like, it's,
all right, Paul. Well, let's get something to eat, man. I'm hungry.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you taking the time and spreading the good word of the high jump on the internet. Like, I seeing all that stuff is always fun. If you're jumping in, on the sand and landing in what looks like a bed in the middle of wherever, opposed to maybe someone jumping a multi-million-dollar facility. So like, I get to see everything. So. Yeah, I appreciate what you do, and it's been a pleasure chatting with you, and we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, I got a one guy sent me a picture of him. I put like 4 or 5 of them on. He's jumping over cows.
Yeah, there you go, man. Like that's just.
He was long jumping, like straight on, and jumping over these big oxen, like, and you're like, that was his training. I was like, that was awesome, absolutely. All right, sir. Well, hey,
again, man, appreciate you.
Thanks, Paul, for your time, and let's do it again. I just got through talking to Barbara before you and I talked, so she said she knew you and to mention.
Awesome, yeah. If you guys if you cross paths there, tell I say hi, and look forward
absolutely.
To summer.
All right,
anyway,
sir.
All right, man. Cheers.
Okay.
Take it easy.
Okay, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that'll wrap it up with part 3 of the Paul Galas interview here on Raise the Bar. I'm your host, Troy Haynes, with Sky High and Fly Jump Camps the channel on YouTube and on Instagram, where we feature all kinds of jumping, both high, long, and triple, basketball jumping, mostly dunking, and we talk with trainers and coaches and athletes about how to become better jumpers. Next up on our list of guests will be Robert Atwater, who is a young man from Detroit, Michigan, who jumped 7 feet 2.5 in 2016 and was able to compete at the U.S. Olympic trials in the high jump. And he's actually a young man that I'm trying to recruit to Vanguard University here in Southern California. And after Robert, we will be following up with Barbara Bachoka from Canada, another Canadian Olympic trials high jumper. And we're going to follow her up with a young lady from Azusa Pacific, Jinyenye, who also competed in the 2021 Olympic trials here in the U.S. So we're in quite a run right now, about 7 in a row. I'm starting to lose count, but I hope to keep it coming for you. So stay tuned to Raise the Bar. Next week is Robert Atwater. Until then, this is your host, Troy Haynes, saying, don't forget to raise that bar.